Hi, it's Kathy, and welcome to this video, and thank you for stopping by. Today, I'm excited to share information from Debbie Berndt, who's a parent in Northern California, and let me tell you a little bit about Debbie. Debbie is a parent who's been writing about drug research and youth prevention for years. She has spoken to thousands of parents and teens since 2017. When she realized parents on the front line of youth drug use understood very little about today's marijuana, other substances, and almost nothing about the adolescent brain development. She found the same to be true for teens. She works with many national and local organizations and parents to reduce substance use among youth, including Parent Movement 201, where she is the director. So I'm so glad to have Debbie, who's going to share some insights and her experiences with dealing with marijuana for the teenage group. I know this is a huge issue for so many parents, so I'm really looking forward to hearing what she has to say. So welcome, Debbie. I'm so happy to have you here for this video and for all of us to learn more about, the dangers of marijuana, to really dig into this a little bit, because I think parents, have kind of mixed feelings about it, and sometimes it feels maybe too much to have to deal with, and you can kind of poo-poo it. So I want to really hear it is not a great, it's not good for the teenage brain, and I'm anxious to really hear what you have to say. So if you want to briefly introduce yourself to those that don't know you.
Sure. Thank you, first of all, for having me. It's a pleasure to be getting to know you over the last couple months. And my name's Debbie Berndt. I have been working in prevention for about the past 5 years, specifically youth prevention. I've started doing a lot of writing and work actually against California's legalization bill back in 2016. And we could talk about why I might have been against that later, but it obviously passed. And then I realized that people that were even my very good friends, parenting friends, didn't really understand what we had just done. They certainly didn't understand marijuana. Nobody really understands adolescent brain health right now. And so I started doing a lot of education at that point in time. And I've talked to thousands of parents in the last 3 years, really early 2017 is when I started. I've talked to probably 10,000 teenagers at this point in time, and just trying to help people understand, what this drug is. There's some things you need to know if you want to understand what it does and how it works. So I've been doing that for a long time. When you're in the prevention space, you probably know this, Kathy, it's not a huge space. There's a lot of people that are working in it across the country. And I started, I've been working with people for years, and two women that are in their 80s who have been working in youth prevention for 40 years have been close friends and colleagues and confidants, and helped me in all kinds of ways. And I realized that they started the first parent movement in 1979, and it ran for about kind of 12 years officially. And that parent movement is accredited with reducing the use of illicit drugs in high schools by about 66%. And it's kind of a remarkable accomplishment. And actually illicit drug use is predominantly marijuana in that statistic. So it just became very obvious that we should have a parent movement, kind of reconstitute that for today. They used a pledge to organize everybody and to get people on board. They really focused on education. They focused some on advocacy. And so we created Parent Movement 2.0. And that is to do the exact same thing, is education and advocacy. And then there's, there's a local coalition that I work on that's works on substance use cessation and prevention, and we have a peer-to-peer club locally that I advise, and there's just a lot of great there's a lot to do in this space, and I find myself doing a lot of it in different ways. So
Wonderful. No, that's great. And, it's such a needed area, because I feel like sometimes with the government, or, the overall policies, there's just not enough in prevention. So I think it's really great that people like yourself are stepping up. And so it sounds like you've started this group, and wonderful that you've modeled it after some other, moms from past years who had some success, and, the statistics showed that the use was down. So that's wonderful.
Yep.
So that's great. So I have looked at your site. It's amazing. It's, really well put together to help parents with teen prevention. So I guess you have pretty much mentioned why you've started it. So why don't we just dig into what do you see as the overall dangers of marijuana for teens? And then, for parents, I mean, I hear this so much from parents. My kids are, smoking every day. Their grades are going down. They don't think it's a problem. I feel like I'm totally out of control. There's nothing I can do with this. So, maybe the first is what are the overall dangers? And then what are some tips you think for parents that can really help?
Okay, that sounds great. I should say that the Parent Movement 2.0 website is, when we were building it, a bunch of us obviously were from the marijuana space, but what we realized for parents really quickly is a substance is a substance. If you're parenting substances, you might be parenting alcohol, you might be parenting nicotine, you might be parenting, it just doesn't, you don't know. However, so if you look at the website, there is a dominance of marijuana information, largely because that's what most parents don't understand and what is kind of the most confusing topic. But the second part of the website's really about addiction and about substance use in general. But let's focus on marijuana, because I do think it is the most confusing. So what are the harms? Well, they're kind of, endless, really. Marijuana and THC is a cannabinoid in the plant that makes a person high. And you have a system in your brain and you have naturally occurring cannabinoids in your brain. So when a person smokes a bunch of marijuana, they are kicking off the natural cannabinoids in their brain and running THC on their endocannabinoid receptor system instead of cannabinoids like anandamide that their bodies make. So whenever you take over a neural system, you have the potential to change that neural system. And that's what drugs and alcohol do. And they do it in different ways. And marijuana specifically changes the endocannabinoid system. So, any number of things can come out of that. And you see all kinds of studies. It's always ironic. You hear in the legalization conversation that we need to legalize so we can study marijuana. And sure, we could liberalize the studies of THC in different ways, but we have tens of thousands of studies on marijuana, and a lot of them are on young use, and they show all kinds of things. Smaller brains, immeasurably smaller brains. They show there is a causal relationship of marijuana use to schizophrenia. They show psychosis and psychotic breaks. They show increases in depression and anxiety among young kids. They show IQ loss among young kids. There's this idea that you can ingest a toxin and it have no physiological effect is just, it's been misguided from the beginning. So you'll see lung issues and heart issues, and it definitely crosses the placental barrier. So there's fetal issues if a pregnant mom or a nursing mom is using. I don't know. Does that feel like that answers the question? I feel like we could talk a lot about it.
I know. Yeah, no, it is, there is a lot. And I think that, if parents do go on your site, there's, which we will definitely link all that of information, but, yeah. And I think parents just, I've heard some parents who say, their kids have used and then, they're just, life is falling apart. And I think one thing I heard recently from a parent, which I felt bad for, because it's like, they said, well, his friends are using, but nothing is happening. The grades are still staying up, the kid's still in sports. So the parents are kind of like, no big deal, he can just use. And I'm thinking, okay, we got to look at this as what's good for everyone. It's not just,
right.
And we don't know. Down the road, this child who is functioning well could fall apart too. So yeah, no, that, it definitely, it's not healthy.
Well, And I mean, and to that point, the kids are going to use some drugs and alcohol in high school and be okay, you
Mm,
know. And one of the things that kept me in this work was the notion of adult addiction. Has our understanding of it's really evolved in the last 2 or 3 years, or I'm sorry, last 10 years. Sorry. Um, and what we know now is that adult addiction is a childhood onset disease. So that means it manifests in adulthood, but it started in childhood. And the statistics is like 90% of adult addicts started using something before they were 18.
mhm.
So when you take that into consideration, any person under 18 that's using anything is just taking on this enormous amount of risk. And for what reason? And a percentage of the kids that are using are absolutely going to experience psychosis, addiction, all kinds of life issues that are less than what they could have been if they weren't using substances. So, I mean, I do understand one of the problems in parenting today, and one of the real difficulties is it's daunting. There is no end to the number of issues that we have to parent. There's no end to the very serious things that may walk into our door and to hit our screens, our kids' screens at any given time. And sometimes parents just have to, you know, feel like they just have to deprioritize some of them and over prioritize other ones. And I understand that. But one of the things we try to do is help parents understand how serious the drug and alcohol issue is, to see if they can raise it up their list of priorities that they keep parenting. But it's hard. It's all hard.
Mhm.
And there's, you know, the starting point ideally would be no drugs and alcohol in high school. But life's life and you got to deal with it. So
No, that's good. Good information. And yeah, it is hard. It's challenging for parents for sure. So, do you have tips that you share with parents that you think are real? I mean, what do you think parents can do to really help, start their kids on a healthy path? And what age would you say that the parents should start talking about this?
So the age is so interesting. Everyone, so many people in prevention say the earlier the better, you know, second, third, fourth grade, you know, and then they'll always do these general statements about age appropriate conversations. And you're like,
Mhm.
okay, so what's the age appropriate conversation for the second grader? I think, I do think talking about it a lot is important. Certainly, you know, you kind of have to know your kid, right? I mean, some kids are going to get super stressed out if you start talking seriously about drug and alcohol use and the things that can happen if you start using drugs and alcohol, you know, too early. But some kids really need that information. You know, they need to understand what is going to happen if what can happen if they go down certain paths. So we always say parents have to find their authentic voice. They have to, you know, find what how they're going to parent alcohol and drugs. And there's not a right and wrong way. We do find that by the time you're in middle school, certainly in late middle school, you know, having serious conversations about the potential outcomes. If there's any addiction in the family, the recommendation is to help your kids understand that early and remind often. And it's a tricky one because addiction in a family can take all kinds of forms. It may be talked about in one family, it may not. It may be acknowledged in one family, it may not. It can be a difficult topic. But one of the things that we know is that kids that come from families with addiction are at about a 50% greater risk than kids that don't have addiction in their family. And to arm kids with that information, so that they know they're at a greater risk, can be really prophylactic. So back to the younger kids though too, if not talking specifically about drugs and alcohol, it's always time to talk about resiliency and coping mechanisms at any time. And it's always great to feed back to kids when you see them demonstrating resilient behaviors or coping behaviors, and talking about your own as a parent is always a great idea. So that talking about or demonstrating how you're processing emotions is always a great idea. We have this example of, you know, because we're on screens so often and because life moves so fast, our kids might not see us deal with emotional issues as readily as maybe they did in the past. You know, announce when you're stressed out. Okay, I'm super stressed out. I'm going to go for a walk, you know, so your kids can hear you process, come back from that walk, report in, I feel much better. I don't feel any better. I'm going to go take a bath, you know, so that they can see you kind of dealing with life, and start to see how you're dealing with life as a model. So,
Good.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I like the idea of starting with resiliency really early. I think that's important. And to role model, what you're saying is role model healthy ways to deal with your stress rather than saying, okay, I'm going to have a glass of wine or I need a beer or whatever,
Right.
or smoke something or whatever if you're feeling stressed. So that's good. And having those conversations, I think, are all, you know, super important. As you said, as you know, when parents feel like it's the right time. So are you seeing, and just a little off note, are you seeing more, in your experience, are you seeing more drug use, more marijuana use now that it's legal, or what do you feel like with that?
So if you look at statistics, if you look at use statistics, I can't even say it, statistics, like for example, the California Healthy Kids Survey, it is up. The use of marijuana has gone up over the last several reporting periods. If you look at national use data, and if you look at it by state, which is the more reliable data, all of the states that have recreational legalization have the highest use rates among 12 to 17-year-olds and 18 to 25-year-olds. You know, just this last year, the 26 plus year olds nudged out the 12 to 17-year-olds as the second largest group per capita of users. So we have a lot of young people using marijuana. 18 to 25-year-olds are the largest per capita group, and then 12 to 17, like I said, have been the second largest per capita group up until this year. So it's a drug that filters into the youth communities really quickly. Legalization really destroys environmental protections that are there for parents, and they don't really realize it. When access to a drug is reduced, when a perception of harm of a drug is healthy, there is less drug use among the younger age groups. When access is greater, there's more use. When perception of harm starts to fall, younger people start to use more. So I mean, anecdotally, do I see it? Sure, you know, but statistically is really the more important area to look at. And we definitely see higher use every year over the last several here in the state.
Yeah, it's always concerning.
Yeah.
Okay, so Debbie, what do you hope parents take away from your website and the resources that you're offering?
So the website was built to kind of be a parenting tool so parents could get answers to questions quickly. The other thing that happens, I think in adolescents in general, but certainly in this legalization space, your kids might show up one day and all of a sudden be experts in marijuana and they start to think they know the drug really well. They get a lot of messaging through social channels about the drug. And you'll start to hear all kinds of things. It's not addictive. It's better for me than alcohol. You know, I should be vaping and not smoking cigarettes. I mean, just you start to hear this whole litany of points about the drug. And so the website is designed specifically with marijuana, in the marijuana parts of the website, to be information based. Is marijuana addictive? You can go find it quick. You can, you know, quick writing about why we know it's addictive. Is marijuana better than alcohol? Quick writing about what we know about marijuana and alcohol, and the differences between the two. So my hope is that parents can use it as an educational tool. And again, it's designed so that if they want to go deeper, they can in different areas, but to be able to get information quickly so that they can have conversations with their kids, so they can have conversations with their parenting peers, so that they can have conversations, if they're inclined, with the larger audience or with, you know, the community in some way. So that's that. Then the other part of the website's really about advocacy, and advocacy is really defined very broadly as doing something. And there's a lot of different ways to do things, you know, in the schools, in the community, with kids. So you know, it hopes to give some ideas and some access to those kinds of things as well. The last thing I would say about it is we do have a pledge that we'd love for parents to sign. The pledge essentially puts you on our newsletter list, so it's not a big daunting commitment, and so that we can stay in conversation and keep parents up to date on, you know, different findings. Really tries to be about parenting specifically and doesn't try to go much more broadly than that. The space it's geared more towards prevention. So we have a resource page for, we call it I Need Help. So parents that are moving into the space where where they think their kids are using, or they're, you know, not, or they know their kids are using and it's starting to be more of an issue. So we have a page for that, and we have you on that page, thankfully. But it's really geared towards prevention and education. So,
okay,
yes,
wonderful. No, and I have signed up and and the emails are great. I mean, it's good information, and I think especially for parents who are dealing with these teens,
yeah,
you know, in this area, who need, you know, you need to know, and it's so much, you know, I wish we had that, you know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You know, because you kind of were operating in the dark, you know, you didn't really know.
Right. Well, and I mean, literally, you know, 10 years ago, I know a lot of psychologists, you know, adolescent psychologists that told, you know, plenty of parents, oh, marijuana is no big deal, it's fine. You know, and a lot, you know, a lot of those kids are not fine, you know, it wasn't. So, you know, the information is changing, and people are starting to understand the drug more, and that is a good thing. So
for sure. No, absolutely. So, well, I appreciate that. So we've talked about the website, but we need to know where do we go to find it? And where else, is there anywhere else that parents can find you, or, you know, tell me where you,
the website is great. It's parentmovement2-o.org. Info@parentmovement2-o.org is how to get a hold of us, or me. And yeah, signing the pledge there's a little pledge link in there as well. So those are the ways.
Right. Good. And we will link that at the bottom of this video so you can find it. I'll also have it on my website in, you know, the blog article about this video, so you can find it there too. So wonderful. Well, this is a great resource. I mean, really, because as I said, I've experienced this with one of my kids, and even if you don't see your kid, you know, he's great, he's doing fine now, but his life's different. I mean, it takes away, I will say from personal experience, I think heavy marijuana use takes away a person's dreams. I mean, you're on a path going one direction, and it's just, you kind of, it all just sort of falls away, and it's sad to watch. It really is.
It is sad to watch. And, you know, some people, you know, I've heard it characterized as, you know, change through 1,000 paper cuts, you know, because you know, the marijuana change can be extreme. You know, marijuana causes the most psychosis of all the recreational drugs we have. So it can be extreme for people, but for a lot of people, it's just gradual. It's just a gradual change over time, and feels kind of undetectable until you kind of look back. So, and I think, again, if kids can just delay the use of this drug, you know, there are much better outcomes. And so, you know, so we just have to keep getting the word out. And I think most parents, and we just want to empower parents to, you know, kind of look at this and make decisions about it, and think about how they want to parent drugs and alcohol. Because you know, one of the things I always laugh at, we're all stumbling around trying to figure out how to parent drugs and alcohol. And part of that is because if we were in high school in the 80s or the 90s, there's a good chance we were drinking. There's a good chance we were smoking pot ourselves. Now, the pot we were smoking was 2% THC or 3% THC, which is, you can't even buy today. The least amount you can buy is 18% in flower form or bud form. But if we used when we were in high school, parents have that ambivalence problem, right? Like how can I, or hypocrisy problem, how can I tell my kids not to use if I used? And you know, kind of getting over that and understanding why it's okay to tell your kids not to use if you use is really important. And we're hoping the website does some of that too. So
No, yeah, I think a wealth of information there. So
yeah.
Debbie, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And again, we'll have links below for people to find more information. And if you have any questions, you know, add them in the comments below, and yeah, we'll get back to you. So thank you. I appreciate you stopping by and for your time. Thanks so much for all you're doing.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.